Hello, everybody. We are showing the entries from the June Art Dare, and we are also announcing the August Art Dare. If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, and professional development. The June Art Dare was to work with collage. And you'll see we've got some really wonderful entries with people experimenting with collage. So, this first artist is Anastasia, working with acrylics. And then Anastasia says added some spice with holographic paper. And also, Anastasia says, I recently discovered a la prima technique, and I'm incomparably more satisfied with the result of mixing, and even reused an artwork that Anastasia had used before, put a layer of all the paints, added some pieces of holographic paper to make a veil. Well, what's your take on the holographic paper? Because that's not something you see every day.
Not at all. I think it's really interesting use of it. It adds an element where it gives it more dimension, in my opinion. So I think it's really cool. I also like that there's experiment with the shades of the skin. Really nice.
Here's Anastasia's progress. So you can see on the left-hand side, we've got the painting, these little slivers of the holographic paper. What I like about the holographic paper is it doesn't take over the composition. It's
Mm,
more a complement to what's happening with the painting, because Dorian, I've definitely seen pieces where it's just too much bling.
yes. A little bit
But
overbearing.
yeah, and even these little slivers of gold at the top, that's such a nice contrast because you've got the maroon purplish paint, and then you've got the yellow, which is complementary colors, and we're art nerds here, so we love that type of thing.
It also feels like someone like walking through a parade almost, like confetti falling like just enough where it's like you could still visibly see the people. Yeah.
A lot of movement, I think, to the holographic paper. Even this slide where you can see them distributed, I think is really, really exciting. All right, the next artist we're going to look at is Carolyn. And Carolyn says in the statement, when I have an art block, I will collage, which helps my creative process. I sit listening to music, pick out items to cut and paste. My favorite part of collage is putting animal heads on human bodies. Well, what's your take, Dorian?
Oh, I'm watching the show called One Piece right now, and it's very similar to like that. So I love this already. I think it's a really successful use of not only making it kind of fantastical, but it really gives that. I don't know. There's something there with it, with the poses of the body feeling really natural still, even though I know that there's separate parts being used, like the way that the gestures and the poses sit on the canvas too. I really like all the pieces. Yeah.
I love the background. And then the integration of that with the very bold graphic shapes. For example, the legs is just white paper. But the thing is, it looks great against the green background. So we've got both painterly and more graphic approaches in the same collage. And this one, I just love that there are birds in the background. And then it's like a bird head. Isn't that just hilarious?
And it's weird too because the foreground is usually the ground. So I love for this how it's the sky and then the ground is the background. So it's like a complete switch of what the normal atmosphere or like environment for this being is.
Another fun thing is the way that Carolyn cut at the bottom, and then you can see on the right hand side tore the paper. So, why do you think that adds another element to the collage?
Well, I think adding or having those different textural elements really does change how clean and how crisp and how perfect a piece is supposed to present itself. This feels more not necessarily playful, but it definitely feels more. I guess, natural, if that makes sense, by it being ripped, because scissors are very clean.
There's a textural component to the way that the paper is torn. And again, it's a beautiful contrast, even against the left-hand side, where it's just like a perfect square edge. And then you go to the right-hand side and it's a big surprise. Like, you don't anticipate to see that when some parts are so even and so clean. Well, we've got some great comments on materials. Lisa says, never heard of holographic paper. Trisha says, I love that she uses old artwork. And that's what's so fun about the art dares, because I'm sure when you were in classes, Dorian, seeing other people's responses, isn't it so fun?
Oh, it's the best part. It's the highlight. I crave getting feedback because it elevates the work to a different place and also makes me think all the unique ways that I've already achieved and what I haven't achieved yet.
And I'm sure all of you have seen the way you bounce ideas off of each other. You see one person do one thing, you see another thing, and it sparks another idea in your work. And so that's what I love, is feeling like we're making the art together and not, I don't know, holed up in some basement. All right. We've got the next artist, who is Saleha. And Saleha says that her work is rooted in experiences as a woman, process of learning and unlearning. And Saleha says she draws inspiration from human nature and emotions. And at the same time, her work also addresses the unjust division of space for women, revealing how society's self-proclaimed rules often mask deep-seated misogyny. And we've got a few pieces from Saleha. And isn't it so fun to see not just one collage, but several?
Yeah, I really like that one a lot too.
Well, why do you like it?
I think the thing about this that I love the most, it tells a full story within it. So, like, you have the woman crying on the top part, you have the sunset in the background. I don't know, that the environmental element of it, as well as the actual personal, like, human element inside of it, the way that they combine, it sits really nicely for me.
And this one has such a different atmosphere. This one's really fun. It's very playful. Whereas we look at these other ones, they have a very different tone to them.
Yeah.
I also want to mention color, because sometimes with collage, color can feel a little bit all over the place because you're not mixing colors. But isn't this a great color scheme?
Oh, green's the best. I love greens and blues. Teal is my favorite color. So.
Oh, is it? That's hilarious. And look at how saturated these colors are.
And then you have like the rips and tears on the top right again, which is really nice.
And also a lot of layering. For example, in the lower left-hand corner, I really like how there are these cutout pieces with text, and then you see the paint behind it. And I think overlap is a really excellent visual tool to use with collage. I mean, isn't this so fun, the way the circles are cut out?
Yeah. I'm trying to think, because this actually reminds me of an artist that, like this one specifically, because of the holes.
Mm-hmm. Yayoi Kusama?
I love that you just know everything.
I know a little bit of art.
Just a taste.
Yeah. Wandering Kathy says, to me, the nested squares of sky give a feeling of some kind of conceptual depth. Clementine says, love how Saleha used colors. The palettes are so pleasing to the eye. And Seven Angelic says, yeah, they do feel like stories a bit. Yeah, there's definitely a narrative element to a lot of these pieces. And the narrative may not be crystal clear and literal, which I don't think is really that interesting, but you can really see that there are ideas. For example, what do you think about the text?
Yeah, I was just actually about to highlight that, because it goes across as world as she feels, and then I think it's supposed to highlight certain elements that she feels. So, because also, again, going back to the artist statement, I know we're doing a little bit of a blind read for some people, but for the most part, it mentioned misogyny and mentioned that it was talking about the impact of some of that stuff. So the words are very important to kind of read through and see why they were decided, why they were chosen. Maybe the date of December 1st is relevant, thinking about all the different things that could contribute to the story. I think she was really focused on the story.
All right, the next artist is Eric Gibson. And Eric talks about exploring unity, or the lack thereof, through hue, saturation, thickness, and texture, different individual material pieces, and they're combined and layered while exploring a subtle narrative. I love seeing these process photos because they tell us a story of how this work was made.
A whole lot of paint chip pieces.
I mean, I would never have the patience to make something like this. I don't know if your brain works this way, but mine doesn't.
I go to Home Depot for paint chips all the time, or the little swatches all the time, just so I can do projects with them, because that's also another reason why I love this piece a lot. The shades that you can get from a paint swatch are really nice, and it's always going to be smooth entirely all the way through. So for this to be made from that, it's like a beautiful mosaic.
Yeah, I would even call this almost a paper mosaic, the way all the little pieces are cut up. And I really like how every piece is a different shape, because number one, that's just a lot more variety. But it's also a feeling of cohesion, that there's a fundamental chaos to this piece, but it gives a lot of energy.
It's really, really cool though. And I like the division of color too that's happening on the bottom with, I don't know if that's the lighting situation or if that's, I'm trying to, I like it though.
I'm sure that's the color. I don't see, well, I'm not sure, but it looks like color to me. Also, what a nice contrast in terms of saturation. Do you see how this is super bright, intense red? And they have these really muted, subtle tones in the background, and that red pops so well. But then also the red appears up here at the top, and that's a nice surprise. And there's one little piece of red right here. Isn't that brilliant?
Everything works in a beautiful way.
Lisa says I'd end up with little pieces of colored paper glued all over me. Yep, that would be me. I'm not the person who can make something like this. Carolyn says, love the mosaic feel. And Clementine's asking, was there a sketch underneath? I don't see any guidelines for Eric's piece in the work in progress. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, some people, like me, need the sketch, but perhaps this came together more spontaneously, which I think is also a great way to work. Okay. Next artist is Elvira Logan. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. And Elvira says, my art deals with the emotions I experienced due to the autoimmune disease I have. Illness shattered my life. One has to take the pieces, put them together to create a new life. Collage is also about putting pieces together. There's also bubble wrap texture, which symbolizes the many pills I am taking. Wow, such a powerful statement. And you see the bubble wrap in the top and the bottom. What do you think?
The story, the presentation, like the actual concept, the execution, I love it. I really love the fact that you decided to use bubble wrap to represent something, a texture that's not normally used for printmaking, and you use it as a really nice print to represent something so powerful. Wow, yeah.
Oftentimes, when I see people using bubble wrap, maybe this is just where I'm looking online, but it always looks cute and fun and play. I mean, why would it? It's bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is so fun. That was the greatest thing when I was a kid. You get a package, you're like, oh my God, bubble wrap. But the thing is, the way Elvira's using the bubble wrap here, it's a totally different context. What do you think of the color scheme?
The color scheme, so it definitely, the muted tones give me a very serious feel for the piece. I like the highlights and the touches of the gold, yellowish Um, it makes me feel like she's somewhere cold, and like there's this kind of light that's just making it in. So it's like almost a hopeful piece, if that makes sense.
I really like that stare of the eyes. I mean, oftentimes I'm always telling people, hey, don't put the face in the middle. That's the default composition that people use for portraits. But I feel like that stare, that engagement with the audience here is really important. And then,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, some of the painting technique, like those areas to the left and the right of the mouth, oh, those are so volumetric. And I mean, I just feel like they're so palpable and emotional. What about this one?
This one, so the cool thing about this one right now is you can still see how it's a shared narrative in a sense. You can still see the bubble wrap in a little part of the bottom on the right side, a little bit on the left side again. But then again, going back to the eyes, love that you're playing around with not only the shadow and the shading, but also your brush stroke, because it switches in this one, for me at least. And it looks like you also kind of took the face and turned it into a puzzle, because if I look at the top right, it looks like I'm seeing a part of the mouth. You have the eyes orientated.
Orientation.
I'm like, wait, what's
It's Sunday morning for me.
say, or kind of close enough. But yeah, I really do love how you're able to change the orientation of the pieces. And yeah, great work, great work.
I really like these glazes of white that have been painted over. That gives it this really almost misty quality. And then you've got this very gritty texture down here at the bottom, which is a wonderful contrast. Zafamo says, love the combination of collage and painting. The one with eyes immediately hit me, feeling of holding yourself together, rebuilding yourself as best as you can through traumas and struggles. Very emotionally evocative. Trisha says, this speaks to me so much. You can feel her emotion. Speaking of Trisha, Trisha is the next artist that we're going to be looking at, and says that these are 4 collages where from the heart, like a self-portrait from within. And May and June were wonderful months for me this year. Enjoy being outside painting flowers, something I've not been able to do for a long time. Well, we have several pieces. And again, these works in progress are wonderful. Isn't the bleed effect gorgeous?
I think that's actually one of the highlights of watercolor anything, is the fact that it can be so light but have such a powerful impact on the composition itself. And then for you to use an actual material that's not paint for the flower petals and kind of lift it off the page to make that the focal point, I think that's really a great choice and a decision for the composition.
And Trisha, it does seem to me as you were doing the process that you're reacting to what's on the page. And so I do feel like in terms of your technique, there is a certain degree of spontaneity that seems present in your process. And then the way in the pieces you pull things out, you push things back. I feel like there's a lot of depth in these.
And it only gets, like, the more you look at it, the more depth that it has. Like, I think that's one of the cool parts too now, because I'm looking at this one right here specifically, seeing how you went in with the different shades of the marker and kind of highlighted the points of the flower. I would love to see you keep experimenting with this style, this playfulness.
And pattern. I love the little pieces of pattern that are scattered throughout. I think those are a really important element, because I think without the patterns, maybe some of the shapes would have looked more plain, but the patterns really enrich, I think, what's happening in some of the graphic areas. Just a beautiful combination of so many visual languages that you were able to balance. And I really love this shot because you can see the flowers in the background. It contextualizes basically what inspired you to make these pieces. And that's just so wonderful to see. All right, we've got Alice. And Alice says, I found expressing how fluid, even spontaneous, the work process can be. Used gouache. Through collage, I found something tactile where I could rip, sneer, and tear paper apart, where I could move the composition before, during, and after. Absolutely. Collage is, I think, one of the most effective ways to learn composition because it's so easy to move things. In drawing, you have to like redo everything. Well, what's your take?
It's really cool. Again, using flowers. Flowers are a really great object to study in art. Is something that I just keep feeling more and more. But back to the actual point of this. Painting looks really good on the bottom. I love the representations of the woman at the bottom. I really like the layering in this one because it makes me feel like there's a lot of thoughts, a lot of things happening. Look, because to me, I see this as a skull. So I'm picturing it like breaking out of the skull. But it looks like there's a lot of thoughts on the mind, mainly about flowers, but it's really cool.
It has a ton of depth. I mean, don't you feel like you could just reach in to this collage?
Like this is a field.
It is. And that kind of depth, I think, is really hard to achieve in a two-dimensional artwork. Now, this one's so different. What are you seeing here?
It's like almost she built her own collage in a sense, because labeling everything, I'm looking at it as though it's doing your hair or getting ready at night, or maybe even getting everything off at night. And that's actually really cool too, because the headphones are made to look like a music note almost in a sense.
I just love the tears, the way that they're floating across the composition, and they have this beautiful row. And the words keep you really intrigued to try to, I guess, figure out what Alice is hinting at. And actually, some of my favorite text is on the right-hand side where it says home sweet home, because that's such a cliche. And yet it doesn't feel a cliche within the context of this because of the facial expression, because of deadly nightshade. We had so much of that growing up. Like our whole backyard was deadly nightshade. It's like really bad. And it's so pretty, you know.
I've actually never heard of deadly nightshade.
It's very pretty. It's bright red. It makes you want to eat it, but it's totally deadly. What about this one? Because this is a portrait where you can see more visibly the face. But I think what startles me is that big green rectangle.
Yeah, it's almost like tape over the mouth. And also, I really like the eyes in this one because I'm going to learn all the names of art pieces again. But you know the one with the girl in blue, right? No, the girl who's sitting there with golden hair, kind of a bluish bonnet.
I don't know.
Watch. Everybody go to the art prof page after this, and I will have tagged them in something about the piece. But I really like that it does that kind of look of, again, hope. Like it's very hopeful, even though the situation doesn't look that great. I like the flowers being a main theme in this again, and also the colors being really vibrant, even though the situation might be in direct contrast with that. Yeah.
Some Angelic says the imagery of the head cracking open is both bright and happy, but slightly creepy, which I love. I think that's a really good way to sum it up because the colors are really bright and really exuberant. But then it's like you look at the eyebrows and that totally changes the tone of the portrait. So some really brilliant decisions going on in here, Alice. We have some prizes to give out. Honorable mention goes to Carolyn. Congratulations. And our prize winner is Saleha. Congratulations, everybody. We are so proud of you and all the work you did. It is so great to be able to show you all off here. let's talk about the August Art Dare, which is based on underwater creatures.
Yeah.
Create an artwork with an underwater creature or several. And this is super fun. They can be real or they can be fantastical. Dorian, when's the last time you went to an aquarium?
A year ago, and I love jellyfish so much. Like the free moving, like just slowly going through the water in the coolest way possible. Yeah, they're beautiful. So if there's any opportunity to go to an aquarium, I would highly recommend it, which means I highly recommend you do this art there.
You know what's really fun too is a lot of the aquariums now on their sites, they have a live cam. And so you can just stare at jellyfish live on their website, which is super fun. So tell us in the chat, who here has been to an aquarium and where was the aquarium? Or maybe you've encountered fish at a pond, or hopefully you have not encountered a jellyfish at the beach. That would be a little terrifying. But tell us what has been your interaction. Or maybe you have fish. Did you ever fish or anything growing up, Dorian?
The one time I went fishing, I like did that, and then I came back up, and then I had a hook in my head, and I was like, I'm not doing this again.
Oh my God.
I was clumsy as a kid, so the more glass in front of me with the fish, the better.
Well, these are from the Utah Aquarium, and actually this is a puffer fish from the RISD Nature Lab. So they have a lot of like dried out fish and skins. And remember, we also have our free reference photo collection on Flickr. We've got a whole collection that is all images of various aquariums that I've been to. And the other thing about this art dare too is, sure, it's about the creatures, but also the environment.
Environments build a composition, build a story for everything. It's the foundation.
Also, I love the facial expressions. What do you think he's thinking?
Give me that filet-o-fish.
Oh gosh, cannibalism amongst all the fish. And it's also fun to think about how fish group, because yeah, sure, sometimes it's like a shark coming to kill you or something. Hopefully not. But isn't this fun to see the little pieces of the fish floating together?
Yeah, it also, I love how I see Marvin and Nemo on the top left.
Oh, you're right. That is so funny.
Like, this actually made me think instantly of Finding Nemo because of the School of Fish setting, where it's like, it's just all these small elements really add up and make something either really relatable or just really nice.
Clementine has been to one in Malaysia. Carolyn says Boston, Monterey, Chicago ones. Also went snorkeling with fish last week on vacation. Whoa,
That's sick.
That's so cool. Zafamo says Seattle Aquarium, Point Defiance. Counselor Chip swam with whale sharks. What? That's amazing. Benjamin says Duluth. And Counselor Chip says Georgia Aquarium. ... Yeah. Kimberly says Puget Sound. Opportunity to see killer whales, gray whale, lots of jellyfish. Suzanne says Boston Aquarium. Oh my God, I miss the Boston Aquarium so much. Have you been?
It's huge. I don't remember it the best, but I do remember it being gigantic and having a really cool amount of fish and animals in general.
Well, what I like about the Boston Aquarium is they have this giant tank that just goes down the whole center of the building. And actually, my funniest memory is I once saw a huge fish in the tank, and he had like a bite taken out of his head. Like another fish must have come in and just like taken a bite out of him. It was very sad.
I couldn't be a fish.
Artisina says aquariums like the San Antonio Zoo. Ronan has been to the Dubai Aquarium. Oh. Karasu says Shed Aquarium. And Carolyn saw tiny Portuguese man-o'-war jellies on the beach last week. Didn't get stung. Okay, any jellyfish that's called man-of-war, I don't want to be there.
Not taking any chances, Clara.
God, no. I'm so paranoid. Another thing that's really great for some of you to do is if you just Google art history fish or art history shark, you can come up with some really cool examples from art history. I love these two crabs by Van Gogh. They just look like they're having fun. They're like hanging together and having a cute little conversation. What do you think about this piece by, I think it's Chi by She?
Yeah, it's really cool because it uses a traditional style, but then it also switches over to kind of this underwater sea piece where you're used to seeing like the trees in the background and seeing like really beautiful just background. This one has nothing because, in my opinion, I think it's just because it's underwater and they're not necessarily near anything just yet. So I kind of relate it to that. But I love the strokes. I love the weight. It makes me think that the crabs are a little bit heavier than the fish. Yeah, there's a lot of elements to this that are pretty interesting.
I love this mosaic that's in Pompeii. And I saw this when I was, oh my gosh, it's just in the 90s. I'm so old, Dorian. When I was in college and I was in Italy for a whole year. And this is such a weird mosaic because some parts of it, you're like, oh yeah, that's a fish. But like, what is happening in the middle?
Looks like it's got a hold of two crawfish.
It's just so weird and super stylized. So certainly you can go along with something a little bit more representational. I mean, I love this painting too. This is in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. And oh my gosh, this digital photograph just looks like crap because the transparency of the figure, the shark coming out. Have you seen this painting before?
No. It's the shark. I like the detail in the shark though a lot. It's like the water. If people can do clouds, water, and like skies in general really beautifully, I already am in awe. So.
Well, I remember when I've seen this painting, and I've seen it multiple times, seeing the brushwork on the shark's teeth. Oh, that has like painters drooling over that moment of paint, which is just so wonderful.
And what's the scale of it? Oh, sorry.
It's huge. I think the figures are not quite life size, but they're pretty close. It's gigantic painting. It's one of those paintings you stand in front of it and it just envelops you. Oh, I want to go back now. We have the Art Dare Leap. This is for people who want to do something a little bit more ambitious. It is absolutely not required, but we're going to challenge you to make 4 artworks with a creature or several creatures. We have this wonderful space in our Discord, which is for people who are doing the art dares, because we love these streams. But Dorian, one of my favorite things is watching people make the artwork over the period of the entire month. And why do you think that's such a rich experience for people?
Being able to be a part of the process and also being able to share not only insight of what your ideas are, but kind of a glimpse into who you are as an artist. Like it's one of those times to play around. There's the fantastical element, but also the real element. So being able to see a process from start to finish is always helpful.
And you guys give each other ideas, which is phenomenal. And I do think it's fun to feel like you're in the same boat together. You're hanging out and thinking about all these different ideas. Now, to submit, you want to tag us on Instagram.
I'm like, which way?
Which way are you going? Tag us on Instagram. Use hashtag ArtProfDare. But if you don't have that, we also have the Art Dares section on our website, and you find the page. And then we also have a Google form. So if you're not on social media, you can just fill out the Google form, which is very easy. Visit artprof.org. We have tons of stuff on there, which is not available on YouTube. Use the search bar. you can sponsor a video. We've had several people step up from the community who have provided the budget that we've needed to provide the time and the space to create some of these videos. And I'm so grateful to people for making it possible for us to create content that I otherwise wouldn't have time for. Join our Patreon group. You can share your art with us in weekly voice sessions. You get support and very long, nerdy professor critiques from me in the Patreon group. You can find support in a small group of artists. Art Prof has services. We have artist calls, personal art curriculum, statement editing, portfolio critiques, and a huge shout out to our top Patreon supporters, many who, by the way, have been supporting us for years. And that kind of loyalty just blows me away. Art Prof has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. And subscribe to our channel for more tutorials, critiques, and business tips. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.